We are gonna continue. Yesterday, the electricity, no, the internet was down, so the stream had to end. What the fuck I have to? Yeah, 1 hour late. But who the fuck cares? Others are now left shells which are near each other. They now are distant and sober. What has happened? The rock is no more. Perhaps not a single one of its facts has been destroyed. But if they no longer cohere and thus keep their spatial relation to each other easily unaltered. If you watch a young child again, two things of very diverse material may, as I have already pointed out, have the same form. This is because many different things may enter into same relation. Not only blocks may sit one above another, but also boxes, stones, books, or thousand other things. A column of lines of print is just as much as a column of one bricks, because the same relation hold among the respective parts of both structure. When we speak a column as such, we are quite indifferent to the nature of its material being concerned only with things ranged above one or below each other. Above and below are the essential relation which all columnar structures have in common, and by virtue of which they possess a common form. Okay. Suppose, however, a column to be perfectly homogeneous made of single stone or a tree trunk or cement casting. How can we say then that it is made of parts ranged one above the other? Yeah, I mean, okay, but it is still made out of things stacking up. Just I don't know. Maybe it has answer. It has no parts in the sense in which a column of blocks or books has parts. Okay, there are no dividing lines. What is supposed to be above the what? Well, for one thing, the top is above the base. Okay. Also, if you draw parallel rings around the column, any such ring will be above or below any other. The rings divide the column into imaginary parts which are ranged in order. We may draw an infinite number of rings, but this relation will always obtain among them. In the previous chapter, I pointed out that the elements in structure need not be physically separate, first existing alone and then brought into combination. They must only be conceptually distinguishable, and ideal parts are geometrically distinguishable. So they be set off from each other by artificial or purely imaginary lines. Therefore, even though a column be not composed of pieces set up one upon another, it does allow us to conceive of its possible section as arranged in this fashion, and it is simply on the basis of such conception that we call an upright beam or an ob- oblique wait Mm-hmm.
Obelisk.
Obelisk. Okay. Obelisk. Sort of the obelisk posture. Okay. Four-sided stone mounted that is usually monolithic has a pyramidal from originally constructed by ancient Egyptian and called Teknu. The Greeks used the Greek term obeliskos to describe them, and this obelisk obeliskos to describe them, and this word passed into Latin and ultimately English. Though William Thomas used the term correctly in History of Italy of 1549. By the late 16th century, Shakespeare failed to distinguish between pyramids and obelisks in his plays and sonnets. Ancient obelisks are monolithic and consist of single stone. Most obelisks are made of sourdough. Okay. Or even the air in a chimney or the mercury in a thermometer tube, a column. We can distinguish parts among which the governing relation of the column form holds. In the related parts of structure may not be parts at all, but may be physically inseparable qualities, aspects, location, or whatnot, just as well as actual ingredients. I shall not aspect, location, or whatnot, just as well actual ingredients. I shall not refer to them as related parts, but as elements of the structure. Thus, in a column, whatever is ranged above or below something else in a is an element. Every structure is at least ideally composed of elements. In a musical scale, the elements are tones. In orthography, letters. What is orthography? A method of representing a language or the sounds of language written by symbol spelling. A set of convention for writing a language, including norms of spelling, capitalization, emphasis, hyphenation, punctuation, and word breaks. The aspect of language. Basically, in a normative way to write that long language is orthography, I guess, with following many rules that language brings. Okay. In penmanship, there would be the height, curvature, and slant of lines which compose letter. Note that in oh fucking note that in this last case the elements are not parts but merely abstractable fact. Property is not proportion of writing. But since yeah, property is not portion of writing. But since this property may related to each other, since we may speak of relative height and width, the spacing, the rounding, etc. of letters. These characteristics may be taken as elements in the structure called a handwriting. Likewise, in judging a musical instrument, say a violin, one considers the proportion among certain attributes of its sound, the timbre, clarity, volume, and so forth, rather than relation of individual tones to each other. Here, the various tone qualities are the elements of a structure which we call the tone of the violin. They are not separable parts of anything, but only distinguishable in conception. Now, the elements alone do not constitute a structure. We must know this element and also the way they are combined. That is, we must know the relation that hold among them in forming a conceptual picture of a construct, as we do when we describe it in language. We must have item in the language pictures to stand for the elements, and also elements of language to represent the relation. There are so many ways of relating elements that relation must have names. In fact, one might say that conveyance of relationships among elements is the real function of language. If our interest centered upon things, we would not need the whole system of nouns and adjectives. Yeah, nouns means names an object or set of objects. Adjective means, describe the object in a little bit. Verbs and prepositions, which we call language, grunts and demonstrative gestures, would serve almost all purposes of communication, but relation are not things we can point to. They cannot be known by pure acquaintance. A knowledge of how the elements of a thing belong together is always a knowledge about this thing and requires a logical picture, such as grammatical word picture for its expression. We must have signs for elements and signs for their relations. And that is just what we have in language, such as word upon, to the right of, near, greater than, are the names for relations. They do not denote elements in a construct, but the way these elements are arranged. To some, same is true. Such words as loves, hates, knows, rights to, escapes from. They are expressive of relationships into which certain elements may enter with each other. Terms and degree. The elements which are connected by relation called its terms. Every relation must have terms in order to become visible to the understanding at all. Okay. A relation may be likened to the keystone of an arc and its terms to the walls, which are combined by the keystone and at the same time are its sole support. Thus, in a structure involving a relation, there must always be elements to which serve as the terms of the relation. Such words upon as upon, loves, gives, etc. cannot stand alone, but must function in a complex of other words denoting elements. Different relations require different numbers of terms to support them. The relation being north of, for instance, requires two terms. We say Montreal is north of New York. Okay. On the other hand, the relation between requires three terms. We would not say that one term is between other, but should have to introduce another element and say that the first is between the second and the third. Thus, we might say colleague Holgane. Oh man, I have to check it. How is this pronounced?
Cologne.
Cologne. Yeah, okay, Cologne, but that G should be removed. Then I guess, then I think it is Cologne. But maybe G is the silent word. Cologne. Okay. Is between Cologne is between Paris and Berlin. Really? Maybe it is. Yeah, it is city in Germany. Most populous city and the largest city of German state of North Rhine-Westphalia with nearly 1.1 million inhabitants in the city proper and over 3.1 million people in the Cologne-Bonn urban region. Cologne is also part of the Rhine-Ruhr metropolitan region, the second biggest metropolitan region by GDP in the European Union, centered on the left bank of the Rhine. Cologne is located on the river Rhine, about 35 kilometers, 25 miles southeast of river Rhine, Westphalia, state capital Düsseldorf, and 20 kilometers Bonn, the former capital of West Germany. So Bonn was, former capital of West Germany. Okay, and this area is like second biggest contributor to GDP in European Union, not even in Germany. Though that means like it is even richer than Paris. Or which is the biggest then? Berlin, I think, easily is richer than Paris. I don't know. Maybe Paris is the richer one. But we could not say simply Cologne is between Paris. Yeah, okay, yeah. Cologne is between Berlin. Because between is a three-term relation. Yeah. Being north of is two-termed. For although we may say Montreal is north of Albany and New York. Yeah. What we mean is Montreal is north of Albany and Montreal is north of New York. That is between requires three terms to complete its sense. Whereas north of makes sense with two. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it requires three terms because this is the middle. If we say middle finger is in between the left side of finger and right side of finger, then yes, m- in between. And the I think this finger is called something, but I don't know. The left side finger is uh maybe left of this side. It only requires two terms in something like that. That is between. The most elementary characteristic of any relation is the number of terms it requires. If it connects two elements at a time, it is said to be a dyadic. If three, it's triadic. If it has four terms, tetradic, tetradic, and so forth. Triadic, dyadic. I think I pronounced both of them correctly. I have to check this.
Tetradic.
Yeah, tetradic, and so forth. This numerosity is called the degree of relation. Some relation, as for instance, among have no definite degree, but merely more than didactic. So we we may call them poly poly polyadic relations. Polyadic. Let's see how it is pronounced.
Polyadic.
Yeah, greatest of least stop and all other relation expressed by superlatives are polyadic. Some writers call any relation of more than didactic degree polyadic, even when it is definitely tetradic, pentadic, etc. If one deals with relation of very high degree, this usage is obviously justified. And but since we shall deal only with fairly simple structures, I prefer to reserve the expression polyadic relation for relation whose terms are of indefinite numbers. Yeah, okay. Indefinite, definite numbers. Okay. Maybe I should write this.
The book lies open, the ink is dry. Why did we let this first truth die? The maps are there for us to use, the rhizome that we fear to choose. They warned us of the rigid mold that breaks the map, the vital fold. Yet we prefer the root the same and bind ourselves in fear and shame. They warned against the law of kin, affiliation we are trapped within. We are not built like rooted trees, but are defined by hierarchies. Blind habits block the active will and force the nomad to stand still. We lack connections far and wide and lines of flight that lead outside. Wasp and orchid both embrace the folding of a different space, but when our lines begin to grow, we still repeat the ancient no.
Okay. I'm gonna write down this paragraph. Let's see. Propositions. The commonest means of expression. The commonest means of expressing a relation among several terms is proposition. Whenever we assert that something is the case, we mention to. Oh man. I'm having a little bit of sleepiness going on. The commonest means of expressing a relation among several terms is the proposition. Whenever we assert that something is the case, we mention a relation among certain elements. Whenever we say Brutus killed Caesar, or Abraham was the father of Isaac, or the winters in Serbia are cold, each proposition utters that a certain relation holds among certain terms. Any linguistic statement of a proposition must contain words for terms and for at least one relation. For the statement is a word picture or logical picture of a state picture, or real or imaginary. And a state of affairs is a complex of related elements. If we assert a proposition containing only one relation, such as Brutus kills Caesar, the number of names for elements that figure in the assertion tells of what degree the relation must be. By certain conventions of syntax, i.e., by the fact that killed is an active verb form and that Brutus stands before and Caesar after the relation sign. Here, the verb we know how the complex of Caesar and Brutus in relation killing is put together. Okay, any symbolic structure such as sentence expresses a position if some symbol in it's understood as represent a relation and the whole construct is understood as a assert that elements denoted by other symbols are thus related. In ordinary language, the verb usually performs both functions. It names the relation and utters that it holds among the elements. But if, as is often the case, the relation is named by proposition, by a preposition or other kind of word, then an extra word is required to assert the relation. This is the auxiliary use of the verb. For example, the Brutus killed Caesar. The verb furnishes both the name of the relation and the assertion that it holds. But in the book upon the table, the proposition upon merely names a relation without making any assertion. To make the structure proposition, we need an auxiliary word. Example, the verb is to assert that the relation hold between the book and the table. The book is upon the table. Yeah, okay. The relation is name and is said to hold between the elements. The book, the book upon the table. Yeah, the relation is name and is said to hold between the elements. Okay, I didn't understand it quite well. Maybe I will come back here tomorrow or reread it later. Ah man, I'm really feeling sleepy. Yesterday I was feeling quite fucking good, but the internet went or shut down and it was terrible. Mm. Natural language and logical symbolism. Unfortunately, in the matter of picturing the exact logical structure of state of affairs in expressing propositions, language is very elusive. In the first place, it does not by any means employ certain kind of simple symbols for terms and in the other for relation. Every broadly speaking, nouns represent elements and verbs, relations. In logically perfect language, this would always be the case. But in the traditional idioms of the human race, it is not. We use all sort of word complexes, all sort of syntactical devices to convey now elements, now relation, so that natural language, if we take take it as a guide, would often lead us to into wrong logical analysis. For instance, wife is a noun, and in the proposition, Jones killed his wife, it denotes a term. But if we say Sanpati is the wife of Socrates, okay, what? How does this sound? Because yeah, I think I am pronouncing it wrong. Wait,
Xanthippe.
Xanthippe, okay. Jones killed his wife. It denotes a term. We say Xanthippe killed his. Xanthippe is the wife of Socrates. The relation is being the wife of. In this case, the noun wife names the relation, and the verb is assert that it holds between its terms. Yeah. To avoid such ambiguity as well as great many other difficulties, we replace word by arbitrary arbitrary symbols, numbers, letters, or other signs which are not subject to the vagaries of literary grammar and syntax, brother, but present a simplified grammar of logical structure. In such a symbolism, one character stands for one term, another for another term, etc., and a symbol of different type entirely. And a symbol of different type entirely represent the relation. Let us suppose that A and B stand for John and for his wife. Then we would not denote the relation of killing by K, which is another Roman capital letter, but by some radically different symbol. We might use an arbitrary sign, an arrow or a curl, some different type of letter or combination of letter. Let us make combination of lower case Roman letters KD. Then the proposition symbolically present reads A killed B. Okay. On the other hand, let C stand for Xanthippe and D for Socrates, and the relation is the wife of to be represented by WF. The second proposition is then C is the wife of D. There is no danger of confusing wife as a term with wife as a relation. If one called B and another, oh man, like I am really doing it terribly. Wanna end it here. I'm really feeling sleepy and this is not going well. I'm gonna sleep and I'm gonna reread all of this tomorrow in more clear manner. Sorry man, like I cannot continue. I'm feeling sleepy man. I think I should have slept a little bit before starting the stream. Just little.